So if you want a detailed understanding of all the models in the PRS S2 range from someone who does have some knowledge about PRS guitars, this video is for you. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Ministry of Guitar. I'm Utkarsh. If you like what's going on this channel, please do like, subscribe and share. It really helps. So on to the topic at hand. I'm going to be going through the new PRS S2 range for 2024. PRS announced a major upgrade relatively recently, so I thought that this was a good opportunity for us to go through model by model. And this video really will go through each and every model. I'll lend my perspective on each of them. There's a lot of choice that you have. So if you're struggling with which one to choose, because the PRS S2 is a great range for anybody, intermediate guitarists perhaps looking to buy their first good guitar. The core gets very expensive, the SE is not quite special enough, the S2 is now perhaps a great choice for that. So we'll go model by model. Okay, so let's start off with the full range over here. So you can see the custom, you can see the McCartys, you can see the standards. There's a lot going on. So how do we make sense of this? Let's go with the first one, the custom. The customs are essentially built off the core model, which is the PRS Custom 24. That is the bread and butter, the E-Class, the Mercedes E-Class, the BMW 5 Series, the Apple, iMac, iPhone, I don't know. It is the core of this lineup, and there are two options that you have over here. There's the S2 Custom 24 and the S2 Custom 2408. Only difference between these two guitars is the electronic, so we'll talk about that in a second. So let's open the S2 Custom 24. Hopefully it opens up. There we go. So what do you need to know about this guitar? So this is based off the core PRS, the core PRS Custom 24. It has 3 or 4 things to make it cheaper, to make it slightly more accessible from a price point standpoint. The first thing to note is look at this body carve. If you look at a core PRS, the body carve will be much more sophisticated and much deeper. That's called a violin carve. This one I think is called asymmetric bevel. So it's not a violin, it's an asymmetric bevel, and you can very clearly see the line. So that's one thing that makes it cheaper. Second thing that makes it cheaper is that the wood is not as figured, the maple is not as figured as what you would get on a core PRS. By the way, everything I'm mentioning here is basically what makes S2 different from core. So you can use this for most of the other models that I will refer to after this. So this maple is not as figured. That's also cheaper because to get really figured maple, that's more expensive. Third thing is the joint, or rather the way the neck is made. I don't think they have a photo of the full neck here. Let's see if we can find one. No, they don't. I'm just scrolling through the same pictures, aren't I? So the way the neck is made is, for the core PRSs, they are made from one piece neck made from a quarter-sawn piece of mahogany. Here, there's a couple of pieces using a scarf joint. No less strong, but cheaper to make. So those are really the 3 big differences. The big upgrade for this year is the electronics, because these electronics are now identical to what you can get on a core PRS. This was not always the case. Previously, for the core S2, you used to get cheaper electronics, more similar to what you get on the SE range. So that's the key thing to note. Now, what else do you need to know about this particular model? I think the main thing to know is this: if you are confused about which guitar to get, you can go with this. You won't go wrong with it. It'll pretty much do everything. It's a more modern guitar. It does have a pattern thin neck shape, so do note this. Pattern thin is not a thin neck, but it is the thinnest neck that PRS makes. And other necks that you will see, which are pattern vintage on the McCarty, and just a regular pattern, I think, on the 22, we'll come to that in a second. Those are thicker necks, so something to note. Any other thing that I want to call out for you? There is another difference, aesthetic difference. The way these birds are made, the birds on the fretboard, they are, I would say, a little bit more two-dimensional. And I think these are made out of acrylic. Let me see if it says what the birds are made out of. Birds, fretboard inlay, just says birds. Doesn't say what is the difference. Maybe it's there somewhere in the overall thing. Give me a second. I'm just going to check whether PRS have called out. I remember them calling out the exact difference on the birds. Let me see. Oh, it's here. Acrylic. Oh my God, I got it right. So it's got acrylic birds. whereas the core has acrylic Jaybirds. By the way, Jaybirds is just a slightly different design. When I say it's a different design, here you just have one piece of bird. Here you have inside bird, outside bird. A bit more sophisticated, hence the Jaybird. And they have acrylic Jaybirds, but they have abalone centers. This is just one piece of acrylic, so a little less sophisticated. So that's the other difference. You will see this throughout all the guitars on the S2 lineup. Going back to the lineup, going back to the S2 Custom 24. Yep, this is the starting point. You can't go wrong. This is the classic PRS shape, classic PRS body. Another thing to note is customs have a thinner body. So the McCarty will have a thicker body. The Singlecut will have an even more thicker body. So another thing to note when we talk about differences. Okay, so that was the S2 Custom 24. The 2408, the difference is exactly what you can see over here. So these pickups are called TCI pickups. They originally come from the Paul's guitar. Actually, they originally come from a guitar called the 40, actually the Signature Limited, which I have one of them. You can check it out on my channel. So these are thinner than regular humbuckers, and there's some wizardry going on that when you split them, they are the sound, the single coil sound is almost the same volume as the humbucker sound. So you get a thinner sound with no volume loss. Typically, if you would split the coils on this particular one, and since we're talking about this, let's talk about the differences in the switching, which will also tell you what a Custom 24 generally has. So Custom 24 has 5-way switch. So neck on the topmost position, only neck humbucker. The next position, position 4, would be a combination of the single coils of neck and bridge. In the middle position would be the humbuckers of neck and bridge together. Position 2, will be the neck single coil with the bridge humbucker, slightly thinner sound. And the last position, position 1, would be bridge humbucker only. So you don't get a perfect split coil sound. You get these 5 sounds. With the 2408, what you get is you have a 3-way switch instead of a 5-way blade. And when you put the switch up, then what you get is humbucker, but there's a coil split. So if you split this, if you press it down, you split it, then you get the single coil. You put it down, you get the humbucker. Middle position, again, you can combine whether this is split or the neck is split or the bridge is split, because these two mini switches, let me see if I can get you a better vantage point. These two mini switches, this mini switch decides whether this humbucker is split or not. This mini switch decides whether this humbucker is split or not. So you can imagine in the middle position, you can have multiple combinations. And then in the bridge position for the 3-way switch, you can either choose this to be full humbucker or coil split. So you get 8 sounds in total: master volume, master tone. The Custom 24 also had a master volume tone. So advantage of Custom 2408 is you get more tones, you get 8 tones. But these are very different sounding from a Custom 24, because even the humbucker sound is thinner. It's brighter than a Custom 24 because it's a thinner humbucker, almost like a single coil. So this is much more, if you like, the much brighter sound. Think if you're a person who likes to play Fenders and you want to have a PRS and you're not fully sold on the Gibson sound, this kind of guitar would be quite good for you. It is also very good for you if you already have a humbucker guitar and you want something versatile on top. So yeah, you really can't go wrong with this guitar, frankly. In fact, for me, the Custom 2408 is the pick of the range. And the other thing I like about it, and I think, let me check if there's a difference in the colors. So Custom 2408, you have this beautiful faded gray, black, purple burst. My favorite. Even the black looks good. Fire red is okay. I'm really liking this gray, black, purple burst. Let me see what you get on the Custom 24. Do you have the same colors? Let me just check. Let's have a look. Oh, you do. So you can get the same color. So it's really just a choice of the electronics between the lot. Let's see what colors. Black amber, bit okay. Traditional. Faded gray, black, blue burst is nice. Lake blue is interesting. Fire red is okay. Again, I keep going back to this one. Reminds me of one of my guitars. There's a DGT, which you can see up there. Can you see? Oh, there you see. There, it was blocked by the microphone. Anyways, similar color that I have, but it's a core DGT that I have hanging over there. Okay, let's go to the next round. So McCarty. What is a McCarty? McCarty is basically PRS's Les Paul inspired guitar, and they're all McCarty 594s because they all have the Les Paul scale length, which is 24.594. There are 3 models here. There is a McCarty 594, which is like a double cut. It's like a custom 24 shape, but it's thicker body, slightly thicker, just 2 mm. And it has 22 frets, of course, and it has a hardtail instead of a tremolo, which a custom 24 has. That would make sense. My apologies if the mic wasn't loud enough. So that's number one. Number two is the single cut. It's exactly like this guitar, but it's a single cut version. And the third one is a thin line, which is very interesting because it's a thinner body. It's a double cut shape. It's also a thinner neck. So this gets the pattern thin neck from the custom 24. Whereas the McCarty 594 and the single cut McCarty, they get what's called a pattern vintage neck, thicker neck, like a 1959 reissue Les Paul. The other thing to note on this one is that similar to the custom 24, the hardware, the humbuckers are identical to what you get on the core, and the 5815 LT are, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many people that I know, some of the best humbuckers you can get. 8515 or the custom 24 are nice, they're very modern, but 5815s are very good for getting those classic Gibson sounds. And what makes them even better than Gibson is they can be split, and they make very nice single coil sounds. Not authentic Fender single coil sounds, but a very usable single coil sound. So that's one thing to note. Other differences are identical, which means it has asymmetrical bevel, slightly less flashy top. The colors look very similar. Let me just check. Yeah, they're very similar colors. This one is different. You get a cherry sunburst on this one. That's interesting. Not bad. Cherry sunburst is nice. The other thing I wanted to tell you about this is the control layout. Let's see if I can find a better photo. So this has the Les Paul control layout, which has master volume, neck volume, neck tone, bridge volume, bridge tone. So it's a Les Paul layout essentially. This is common to all three McCarty 594 models. The thin line, as I mentioned, is the thinner one. Everything else is identical, but it's a thinner body. And another thing with the body, it's a thin piece of mahogany, so there is no maple top on the thin line. So this is what makes the thin line a little bit cheaper. Who is the thin line for? 594 thin line is if you want a Les Paul style guitar, but you want a thinner neck, you want a little bit more ergonomic, versus a thicker body, single cut, or the S2, or the regular double cut shape. We'll just take a quick look at the single cut. You can see the slightly thicker body, otherwise identical to the double cut. Colors are also, colors are also almost identical. Yeah, identical. Oh, honey gold burst. Dark cherry sunburst, honey gold. Was there a honey gold on the regular McCarty 594? Let's have a look. There's a honey gold. Okay, it was just on the other side. I did not notice it. Okay, so those are the McCartys. And now we get to the very interesting part of the range, the standards. And the standards are so many, so where do we begin? Let's begin with the standard 22 and the standard 24. And I want to talk about, why is the thin line here? So I guess the thin line is technically a standard as well, so that's a double count. So the standard 22 and the standard 24 are very similar to the custom 22 and the custom 24 that we saw earlier. But so the S2 standard 24 is the standard version of custom 24. S2 standard 22 has no custom equivalent. It is just a standard. They don't make a custom 22. They don't even make a custom 22 in core anymore, which is a shame because it is a very interesting guitar. So how is the standard different from the custom that you see here? And then how is the standard and the standard satin different? What makes a standard is it's an all mahogany body. That's why it's called a standard. Confusing because Les Paul standard means something else, but the difference between a custom 24 and a standard 24 is it's an all mahogany body. Slightly different. You got a pick guard over here. You don't have that on the maple top of the custom 24. But honestly, everything else is pretty much identical. I just want to see the humbuckers because humbuckers here are covered, which 8515s are not usually covered. Let me see what the humbuckers are. Interesting. So there's another difference. It has 5815 LTs on the standard. This just changes things up because, as I told you, I think the 5815 LT is probably a better humbucker than the 8515 in my opinion. So if you're looking for more, if you want, so the standard 24 probably is for you if you want 24 frets. It's a very modern feeling guitar, but you want slightly more traditional tones. So it's not just a cheaper version of the Custom. I think putting the 5815 LTs on it is a brilliant move, because now it becomes a more traditional version for somebody who still wants 24 frets, who still wants the thin neck, who still wants the tremolo, but suddenly they can get the 5815 LTs, and suddenly this makes this a very interesting shout. And the difference between the standard 24, and the standard Satin is the finish. So this is a Satin Nitro, and if you ask me, between the standard and the standard Satin, the Satin is the one to go for. It's cheaper, but that's not the reason. I think the overall aesthetic of this being a more stripped down guitar, a more traditional guitar, the Satin Nitro finish only helps it in that regard. Let me just check if there's any other difference. 5815 LTs, no other difference. So the standard Satins for me are some of the picks of the range, because I have a few. The story of PRS doing Satin finishes goes back about 20 years. I referred to this in my other video where I introduced this range, and they do a very, very nice, super thin, beautiful Satin Nitro finish that just makes the guitar super resonant. So for me, between the gloss standard 24 and the Satin standard, even though I like gloss guitars, I like gloss necks actually. I'm more of a Les Paul Gibson kind of a guy. But this is the place where I would make an exception, and I would tell you, go for the standard Satin. You have two choices, 24 frets or 22 frets. The only difference between the standard 24 and the standard 22, whether it is Satin or it is just standard, is 22 frets, 24 frets. And that's difference number one. I believe the neck should also be different, the neck shape. Yes, it's a pattern regular. So two differences, 22 frets, pattern regular, which is a slightly thicker neck. So in the bigger scheme of things, if you wanted to understand what is the difference in the different necks you can get, the pattern thin is the thinnest. It's still not a very thin neck. It's much thicker than a 60s Gibson neck, for an example. It's thicker than that. Then pattern regular is like a Goldilocks neck. It's neither thick nor thin. You can't go wrong with it. It's smidge bigger than pattern thin, but pattern thin tends to be a little bit wider than pattern regular width-wise, fretboard width. And then pattern vintage is even thicker. That's proper Les Paul territory, 59 territory. So pattern regular you can't go wrong with. So the choice between a custom 24, or rather a standard 24 and a standard 22, really boils down to whether you want even more of a vintage flavor, a more traditional flavor. 22 frets also affects the neck pickup sound, because the neck pickup on a 22 fret guitar is closer, whereas on a 24 fret guitar is pushed out. So you have a warmer neck pickup sound on the 22 fret standard 22 or standard 22 Satin. So a standard 22 may be able to get you those McCarty 594 sounds, particularly with the same humbuckers, but you have the versatility of having the tremolo, right, and a slightly more modern feel than the McCarty 594, which is very Gibson. So there we go. Those are the standards. Let's have a look at the colors. I hope there's a nice black color in there. There is. Oh, these colors are so nice. Antique white, charcoal, cherry, and probably my least favorite, the honey burst or whatever. It's McCarty tobacco sunburst. I'm not a big fan of of this kind of tobacco sunburst, in my opinion, with this pick guard. But yeah, all these colors are really nice. And let's see if there's any difference in the standard 24. Let's quickly scroll down. They have a very nice blue. So this might tempt you to go for the standard instead of the Satin, because you don't really get these kind of solid blues usually on PRS. Great shout for them to include this, frankly. Even the antique white looks very, very nice. Another thing about these standard Satins, which I keep telling you, is you have to feel the grain of the mahogany. It's so satisfying, especially on the neck. So I have 3 of these, not these standards. I have the original PRS standard series from 20 years ago. I bought 3 of them because I like them so much. They're really, really nice. You can see, I'll probably show them on this channel. If you have seen follow me on the PRS forum, you may have seen them in a New Gear Day, one of the days in the earlier months, rather. Now we get to something very interesting. The Vela. And there are 2 variations. You can get it either solid or semi-hollow. And you can have it either satin, or you can have it non-satin, which is regular gloss. Now, what is a Vela? What is the purpose of a Vela? What is the sound of a Vela? The Vela, if you look at it, is the PRS offset shape. So it's the same PRS body shape, but the neck is kind of offset. So it gives it this kind of an offset kind of a vibe. And like any offset guitar, it's a little bit quirky. It has a Telecaster style brass bridge. So you can imagine this sort of bridge gives it a very specific, a bit more trebly kind of a sound. It has different pickups. It has a narrow feel in the neck. Previously, it used to have a single coil, a D-style single coil. And what does it have in the bridge? What pickup does it have now? DS01. So it still has that unique Vela humbucker. The way I would put who is this guitar for? So to be honest, I have never found the Vela too appealing, but there are plenty of people, particularly on the PRS forum, who really like it. And I feel like this is a very rootsy guitar. I feel like if you want to do a little bit of dirty rock, you want to do some country, you want to do something twangy, you want to do something a little bit different, a little bit indie, that's where this guitar is. It's not really fitting under any particular stereotype, but that's what it's for. I suspect the narrow feel in the neck will give it a much more refined character than the single coil that it had previously. Can't go wrong with it, really, if you like that something's a little bit offset, a little bit off style. I'm not the biggest fan because I am very clearly either in heavy territory or very clean territory. I rarely live in low gain. I don't play much country or I don't play much alternative, but I can fully imagine you liking it. And not to say that this will not do rock and all very well, it will still do it. The neck is pattern regular. So remember what I told you about the necks earlier. Pattern regular is in the middle. Pattern thin is the thinnest. Pattern vintage is the biggest. And everything else is pretty similar to the regular, what you can get. The bridge, of course, is a little bit different. Let's see the colors. So you have the similar colors that you saw on the standard. You have the space blue, which is very nice. And then you have scarlet, tobacco, black, and white. And then with the Velas, as I told you earlier, the choice is, do you want it solid or semi-hollow? And do you want it satin or not? Let's have a look at the satin colors and everything I told you about satin earlier. You can see, and this is better showing you, you can see the grain. I don't know if you can see this on the wood. It just feels very nice. It feels like there's nothing between you and the guitar. I'm trying to look at the colors now. Satin Nitro. Similar colors to the standards, the custom, the 24 standard 24s. Vintage Cherry, McCarty, black and white. And then semi-hollow. Now, if you're buying a Vela, should you get semi-hollow, non-semi-hollow? Really a matter of preference. The semi-hollow will have a little bit more airiness in its tone. No, I mean, no, it's not a tone-wood discussion. It's just semi-hollow guitars have a little bit of this. It'll be a slightly thicker sound, but not a much fatter sound. It'll just have a little bit of extra character. If it was me between the two, I'd probably go for the semi-hollow. I'd probably go for this one, the S2 Vela semi-hollow satin. That'd be my choice. Probably in... Oh, no black here. I was going to say probably in black, but I didn't give a black one. Maybe in white. But it's very, very personal. Okay, folks, so there you have it. Hopefully the entire S2 range has been slightly demystified for you. And you have a better idea of what you would like. If you like this kind of a video, I can do this again for the core range. I can do this again for the... I have done this in a kind of a short form way for the core range already. But if you want with latest developments, I can do this for others as well. All right, till next time.